Hello everyone, welcome back to Revenge with Nora, where revenge is always on. So be ready for another interesting story in the Nora's voice.
Your room? Sweetheart, you don't live here anymore, my mom said with a laugh like I'd asked for the moon. Dad didn't even look up from his coffee. We needed the space, he mumbled. Then added, sharper this time, and besides, college kids shouldn't expect handouts. I just stood there. Suitcase in one hand. Midterms in the other. And no place to sleep. I'd come home for winter break. But apparently I didn't have a home anymore. Hi everyone. My name is Leah. And if you think you've heard this story before, stay with me. Because mine doesn't end with sleeping in my car. It ends with a bidding war, and a front porch full of secrets. Here's what you should know. My childhood bedroom, the one with peeling glow-in-the-dark stars and books stacked to the ceiling, had been rented out to strangers. A guy named Daryl was living in it now. He waved at me when I walked down the hallway. I think you've got the wrong house, he said. Oh, Daryl. This was the house where I used to fold paper cranes to hang above my bed. Where I taped my college acceptance letter to the mirror. Where my mother kissed my forehead and said, "You'll always have a place here." Place. That night I slept in the campus library parking lot. Engine off. Windows cracked. Shivering under a graduation gown because it was the only blanket I had left. They didn't text. They didn't check if I was okay. They didn't care. But I remembered what Dad always said to my brother. Property is power. You want control? Own the land. So I made a vow right there in that car with frost creeping across the windshield. They may have sold my room. But I'd buy their silence. And I'd do it with the keys to the very house they threw me out of. And when the auction date finally came, they had no idea who they were bidding against. The courthouse steps were colder than I expected. Not just from the wind, but from the silence between us. They were already there. Mom in a stiff gray blazer, nervously twisting her wedding band. Dad pacing near the railing, eyes scanning every bidder. They didn't recognize me. I wore a simple black coat. Hair pulled back. No makeup. No emotion. Just a clipboard in one hand, and a number in the other. Bidder number 43. Inside, the room buzzed with quiet whispers. Real estate agents, neighbors, strangers looking for flips. And my parents. They looked like they were trying to buy time. Not a home. Starting bid, $94,000, the auctioneer said. Their house, my house, had fallen into foreclosure 6 months ago. A fact they kept hidden while still posting brunch photos on Facebook like royalty. $94,000, someone called out. Dad raised his hand quickly. 95. I didn't move. Not yet. Another man called out, 100 even. My father flinched. Mom leaned over and whispered something fast, probably about staying calm, acting rich. 105, Dad barked. The room quieted. Eyes turned. And that's when I raised my hand. 110, I said calmly. Dad turned. Eyes locked on mine. At first, confusion. Then recognition. Then panic. Leah, he whispered. He stepped forward. Wait, you're the one bidding? I didn't blink. Stop this, Mom said, voice shaking. Please. We didn't know things were so bad for you. Bad? You sold my room like it was clutter. You can't just walk in here and... 115, I said louder, raising the card again. Gasps rippled across the room. My voice didn't shake. But inside, my pulse beat like a war drum. Dad looked at the auctioneer. We match it, 115. 120, I said. His voice cracked. Please, Leah. Don't do this. I smiled softly. And said nothing. Because I'd planned this for months. I watched their unpaid taxes pile up. I knew the foreclosure date. I knew the bidding process. I knew the court schedule. But they never imagined the daughter they kicked out would show up in silence, and buy the floor beneath their feet. And when the auctioneer banged the gavel, they were left standing in the back row, stunned, defeated, and still holding their broken pride. Sold. The word echoed like thunder. The gavel slammed. The room exhaled. But my parents, they didn't move. Dad just stood there, mouth open, skin pale, like someone had pulled the ground from beneath him. Mom whispered, "This isn't happening." I walked past them without a word. Bid sheet in hand. Deed transfer underway. Every step deliberate. Quiet. Measured. because silence was the only language they understood now. That night I stood at the front gate of my childhood home, keys in one hand, memories in the other. The porch light was off. The grass overgrown. A for sale sign still half planted near the mailbox, like they were hoping for a miracle. I didn't knock. It was mine now. When I walked in, the air smelled stale, like guilt and forgotten things. Their photos still hung on the wall. Mom's live, laugh, love sign above the kitchen sink. Dad's sports trophies boxed in the corner. And my old room, still occupied by Daryl. He poked his head out, toothbrush in mouth. You again. I smiled. Not for long. You've got 30 days. I offered him a written notice and an apology, something my own parents never gave me. He nodded, eyes wide, and said, "You're the new owner?" "Yeah," I replied. Turns out, I needed the space. By morning my parents were parked out front in their car. Waiting. Mom stepped out first, holding a tray of muffins like this was still a sitcom. "Let's talk," she said. Like everything could be softened with carbs. I opened the door halfway. Stayed silent. "We were stressed," she started. "Your father's hours got cut, the bills." "You sold my room," I interrupted. A beat of silence. Then Dad added, "We thought you'd be fine." "You thought I'd be gone," I said flatly. They exchanged a glance. A guilty one. And I knew, this wasn't regret. It was fear. Fear of what I'd do now that the power had shifted. Because now I had the deed. I had the house. I had every right to turn them away. And yet I let them stand on that porch under the same roof they once ruled, with no clue what I had planned next. They stood there like guests at a party they were no longer invited to. "Can we at least come in?" Mom asked, her voice suddenly smaller. Dad, always proud, didn't say a word, but his eyes scanned the porch like a man trying to recognize a life he used to own. I opened the door fully. But not for them. Behind me, a crew of cleaners entered, gloves on, clipboards in hand. "Please focus on the back bedrooms first," I told them, stepping aside. Mom blinked. "Wait, what is this?" "Restoration," I said softly. "Some things need cleansing before they're livable again." She swallowed hard. "You're evicting us?" I tilted my head. "You sold my room. You handed my childhood to a stranger. And when I came home, I didn't belong. Now you don't either." Dad scoffed. "This is petty." "No," I said. "This is math. One betrayal multiplied by silence, divided by years of pretending. You threw me into a parking lot. I slept in a car for 7 nights. I missed classes. I lied to friends about where I was staying. And not once, did either of you check in. They didn't deny it. Because what could they say? The truth was ugly, and louder than any defense. I pointed toward the driveway. "You've got until Sunday." "Leah, where are we supposed to go?" Mom asked. "You should have thought about that," I said, "before turning your daughter into a visitor." They left. Fully. Staring at the house like it was burning, but only to them. I didn't slam the door. I didn't cry. I just stood in the hallway. The same hallway I used to tiptoe down at night as a child. The same one they watched me walk down with suitcases. And no goodbye. No. Now it was mine. But revenge doesn't always feel loud. Sometimes it's a quiet inhale, and the sound of your name finally being respected by the walls that once forgot you. Upstairs I walked into my old room. No glow stars. No books. Just space. So I sat on the floor. And planned the next move. Because this wasn't just about owning the house. This was about reminding them exactly who they raised. And what happens when you forget her worth. To be continued. By Friday, whispers were already circling the neighborhood. Mrs. Barlow from across the street watched from behind her curtains like a hawk in pearls. 2 men with a moving van showed up around noon, and I gave them exact instructions. Only the boxes marked K go to storage. The rest, donation. Mom tried to intercept the men. "That's our china. Our anniversary gifts." I stepped between them. "No. The deed's in my name now. What stays is up to me." She looked like she might scream. Instead she whispered, "Leah, you're humiliating us." I leaned in and said gently, "Funny. That's exactly how I felt when I asked to come home and you handed me rejection in a hallway." By evening they were gone. Their suitcases packed in the back of a borrowed car. Mom didn't say goodbye. Dad didn't even look back. And the next morning, I made my move. I hung a sign on the fence. Not out of spite but clarity. Under new ownership. I didn't need to shout. I didn't need revenge graffiti or rage. Just those 3 words. The neighborhood buzzed. They thought I was too quiet, too soft-spoken, too academic to pull something like this. But they didn't see the girl in the library parking lot. Didn't hear the sobs muffled by a car seat. Didn't witness the quiet rebuild. Inside, I opened the dining room curtains and sunlight flooded the space. I dragged out every relic of guilt, the awards they never came to see me win, the baby photos boxed in the attic, and lined them across the mantel like a museum exhibit. This is who you erased. This is who returned. And when I hosted my first open house that Sunday, for a local nonprofit just to make them sweat, people came. Neighbors. Strangers. Even Daryl holding a thank you card. But not my parents. Because shame doesn't RSVP. Still, I kept one door locked upstairs. One memory untouched. One final move I hadn't yet made. And when I opened that box, everything changed. Because inside wasn't just memorabilia. It was a truth they never wanted me to find. It was buried under coats and broken picture frames. A taped-up cardboard box, marked only with one word. Miscellaneous. I almost ignored it. But something about the way it was sealed, duct-taped at every edge, felt less like storage, and more like something they didn't want reopened. So I cut the tape. Inside were papers. Dozens. Old letters, receipts, school forms from elementary. And then, tucked between a dusty binder and a faded birthday card. A folder I didn't recognize. Legal size. Thick. I sat down on the floor, heart drumming. The first page hit like ice. Request for emergency withdrawal of college savings account. Signed. By my father. Date. 1 month before my freshman year. The next page was worse. A letter from the state. Student aid revoked due to unreported parental income. And then I saw it. A purchase receipt. $17,800 used for a home renovation project. Their kitchen. Their new countertops. The ones they showed off on Facebook while I skipped meals to afford books. They didn't just forget about me. They took what was mine, lied about it, and let me believe the scholarship fell through. I sat there, silent. It wasn't just about the room anymore. It never was. They didn't see me as a daughter. I was just a way to fund their lifestyle. Until I asked for space. Then I became excess. But now I had every receipt. Every paper trail. Every truth. I stood and stared at the wall where their wedding photo used to hang. And in its place I pinned something new. The college acceptance letter I had once framed. With a sticky note beside it. She didn't just get in. She paid. Alone. Then I took a breath. And dialed a number I never thought I'd use. Hi, this is Leah. I'm ready to file a formal complaint regarding misuse of custodial funds. I have the documents to prove it. Because revenge doesn't always knock on the front door. Sometimes it walks in through the records. And takes back everything you were told to live without. The woman on the other end of the phone was quiet at first. Then she said, "You have documentation?" "Yes." "And your age at the time?" 17. She exhaled. "That changes everything." Within a week the letter arrived. State review notice. Custodial misappropriation allegation, opened. It was formal. Dry. But in my hands it felt like thunder. Because for once, the truth wasn't just mine to carry. It was now on public record. I didn't post about it. Didn't gloat. Didn't even mention it to anyone. But someone else did. The day after that letter arrived, a white sedan parked across the street. Dad stepped out. No swagger. Just slow, tight movements, like each breath cost him something. I stayed on the porch. He didn't make it past the gate. "We got something in the mail," he said. I nodded. "We didn't know it would come to this." "You didn't know I'd survive," I said. He looked down. "You're really pressing charges?" "I'm not pressing anything," I said softly. "I'm just letting the truth speak." He ran a hand through his graying hair. "There are things you don't understand, Leah." I stood, and for the first time in my life he stepped back. "You're right," I replied. "I don't understand how a father can steal from his daughter. I don't understand how you watched me struggle, and said nothing. I don't understand how you walked past the car I was sleeping in, and drove away." He had no reply. Because there wasn't one. Later that night, I got a message from a neighbor, a woman I barely knew. Read, "You didn't deserve what they did, but you handled it like someone who knows her worth." That hit harder than the legal notice, because I wasn't seeking revenge anymore. I was building respect, brick by quiet brick. The next morning, I walked through the house with a contractor. We reached my old room. "Demolish the wall," I told him. "I want to expand the space." He looked surprised. "Into what?" I smiled. "Something bigger than they ever made room for." The wall came down on a Tuesday. Dust filled the air. Sunlight spilled in like something sacred. And for the first time, my old room didn't feel small. It felt limitless. I turned it into a study. Bookshelves on every side. A reading chair by the window where I used to cry. No. I sat there with tea and peace. A letter arrived a few days later. State review closed. Custodial violation confirmed. Restitution in progress. Permanent record amended. No courtroom. No spectacle. Just quiet accountability. Filed. Stamped. Final. They owed me more than money now. They owed me a truth that could never be erased. Mom called once. I let it ring. She left a voicemail. "We didn't know you'd grow up to be so powerful." I listened to it while watering plants on the porch. Not strong. Not successful. Powerful. They finally saw it. But it wasn't power that turned the tide. It was presence. The kind they tried to erase. The kind that walks through every room they once ruled. And rewrites its purpose. I host book clubs now. Workshops for first-gen college girls. The house is full again, but this time with voices that lift, not break. Sometimes neighbors ask if my parents ever come around. I just smile and say, "Not everything that's gone deserves to return." And when I sit on the porch at dusk, the same one I once begged to stand on again, I don't feel revenge. I feel reclamation. They took my space, so I made a world. They erased my name, so I built a nameplate by the door. Dr. Leah Monroe. And below it, etched in gold, "You always had a home." Even when they couldn't see it. This wasn't payback. It was peace. The kind that comes when you stop asking for a seat. And quietly by the table,